Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's Grid Talk about the Agile Playbook. Now, for those that don't know me, I'm Pip Morpeth and I'm Head of Professional Services for Method Grid. Just to navigate you all, there's quite a few new people that have joined this session. So we've just added a few slides in just to help people understand what do we mean by the term playbook. So there's a bit of grounding that we've put in for this session, but then we'll get into kind of our initial thoughts on how you build and develop agile playbooks. For those that are new to Grid Talk, we run them monthly, and it can kind of be a mix of different sessions we run. So because we're doing something new with the concept of playbooks, we just recognize that it would be of interest to people, share knowledge, insights, best practice. And sometimes we run with them with clients, partners, sometimes we get industry talkers, or we kind of run sessions like this, which is more focused on what we've learned and just helping clients implement sort of best practices with their own playbooks. If you've never used Livestorm, and I believe this might be the last time we use Livestorm because we're changing our provider. So please feel free just to put in kind of questions or chat in the interactions. I'll try and pick it up as we go through, but it's very much Grid Talk rather than, so please feel free, ask questions because there'll be time at the end. We also record this session, so you have to drop out, or if you want to share this with colleagues, there'll be a recording of it later that you can share. Right. While I've got you, I think next month we might be in the fortuitous scenario where we might run two Grid Talks. The one that we're going to run on October the 24th is about integrating learning and delivery with playbooks. So if you follow us, you'll have seen that we started to integrate kind of e-learning into playbooks so that you can access learning in delivery when you need it. There's a few showcases that we've done with a couple of clients that we're going to bring to life for you. I think there's also another session with one of our partners, Prevelio, which are going to look at more the kind of digital data estates management. So yeah, hopefully a few sessions in October. If you're new to Method Grid, don't know what it is, all we really care about is helping teams improve how they deliver projects and services. We do that by connecting knowledge, experience, and technology, and we're mainly a software business, and the vision is that we're building a AI-empowered knowledge and project management platform, which is underpinned by experts in how you build and transfer capability to clients. And we've got some fantastic clients, majority in the kind of architecture, engineering, construction business, but we also have a number of P3M consulting organizations that we work with as well. Right. There's a lot that I'm going to try and get through very quickly, just to give you a bit of background on the Playbook series. Now, there are, I think, 3 other kind of Grid Talks and a couple of white papers that we've produced on it. But if you go onto our website, you should be able to access the sort of process to playbook, how you build playbooks, but also seeking the playbook investment. So those are resources online, so you can go and access those. But if you want to find more information about playbooks, you can delve into that. I'm just going to do a very quick run through about the concept very quickly. The problem that we try and solve with organizations is how do you reduce the kind of cost of poor quality that comes from inconsistent ways of doing things. And the typical pain symptoms our clients come to us with is probably 1, 2, 6, and 7 on that diagram, which is, yeah, they recognize the way we do things is inconsistent. 2, people find it really difficult. They can't find the information they need. They don't know who to speak to, and they become quite ineffective, which leads to 6, which, you know, I just feel they're constantly reinventing the wheel. I don't think we're scaling. We're just, you know, resetting and restarting every time we do something. And the flip side is on 7, which is our staff take a long time to get on board. We're not talking about 12 weeks, they're fully up to speed. We're talking about 12 months because there's, you know, our kind of the way that we've codified or haven't codified stuff is really difficult for them to get up to speed. The so what for us, there's 4 basic kind of pillars to why we think it's caused, which is fundamentally, 1, you have to kind of provide clarity on the process and method that you want people to follow. That can be anything from we've put it down in 10 slides, or we've built this mammoth SharePoint site that holds it all. But what we find, and we highlighted it as red, is everyone, even though they've written it down, the kind of phrase we get is it just sits on the shelf gathering dust. And I think everyone struggles with compliance. But how can I be confident that people are following the method, using the process properly? So compliance is a universal challenge. 3, about people capability, which isn't the kind of hiring great people. I think everyone tends to hire great people. Everyone wants to do a great job. It's more just a question of, well, what have you put in place to help them be successful? So, what training, resources have we put in place to give them the confidence to give it a go? And then there's the final one, which is more about kind of audit and assurance, that kind of to manage the residual risk. And that's basically giving teams clarity on what are the standards, what's the evidence that we need, and if you are being assured and audited, how quickly can they be part of an integrated team and find the information they need as well when they need it, rather than sort of pestering and trying to find and trawl through SharePoint to find the kind of evidence or resources and documentation they need. So that's the kind of problem statement. Why playbooks? And there's kind of 3 key concepts, and we do more of a deep dive on this in the process to playbook GRIDtalk. But very much the processes provide clarity, but what we found with it is organizations experience kind of high drift. So I have a level of, this is the level I want people to meet, and then what I have is a kind of how work is actually done in the organization. And what you find is there's quite a high drift to how you expect, or how you've written it down towards how it's actually done in live and operation. So the kind of knock-on effect of that is, well, teams are constantly firefighting issues caused by drift because we're inconsistent, but also there is a critical point of mass where we have done something, we haven't complied with the standard, and therefore it builds up, and those kind of incremental kind of failures build up, and then it creates a significant failure. It might be like a significant impact to our schedule, might be a significant impact to cost, or the reality is in the environments we work in, it's a risk to life and a health and safety event. So that's the kind of challenge that we phrase that kind of as organizational drift problem. The middle bar is then, okay, so why does it happen? And what we found, the kind of traditional approach that companies take is we place the burden on the individual to go and find and locate all the information and resources they need. And in fairness, it's that kind of diagram tries to illustrate it. It's kind of a visual map in their head where all the kind of standards, processes, templates, information exists, and it can be scattered in different SharePoint sites, different locations, and it's constantly changing. And what we find is, being compliant to process is incredibly difficult, because the individuals really struggle to find the information. They don't even know that it exists. And what we find is, in that world, because humans are kind of always trying to seek the path of least resistance, it just becomes too awkward for them, and that kind of leads to the behavior of, oh, I'll just do it myself, or I'll find my own way of doing it. So that really kind of adds to the kind of compliance challenge. And then the final point is the shelfware trap, which isn't just the fact that your assets are gathering dust. What we find when you have high drift, low compliance, what the kind of natural response is you increase the level of control. So, line 1 defense has failed, so therefore we need more PMO, we need more independent assurance, and what happens is lines 2 and 3 become quite overflated, and you have to kind of avoid, if you're not careful, you essentially build an oil tanker, which is really slow to adapt, quite difficult to innovate, and quite an awkward organization to work in. And our kind of philosophy as well, look, if you actually try and make it easier for people to follow the process and use it, that will help you kind of get a more balanced control system for how you operate. So the concept of playbooks, I'm going to introduce it, is what we recognized was, well, it would be easier if we could basically codify process knowledge into a single platform, so that teams would have, this is the deliverables, this is the information you need, but basically integrate knowledge and delivery, but give teams the ability to structure that process and be able to evidence compliance as they work through the playbook. And more recently, which is the topic for next month, which is actually how can we integrate learning into the platform or into the playbook to help people build their confidence in how to do things. Very quickly, you know, the kind of method grid platform, which I'll show you because we're going to show you a few examples of how we support Agile. Yeah, we fundamentally merge knowledge and project management together. Just very simply, it's if this is what we want you to do and how you do it side by side, it's a bit easier. Two, we keep it really simple. It's a grid-based structure. It kind of helps teams just navigate through the left to right, and you might have rows for different functions or different groups that need to interact with that process. I think the real differentiator for us was 3, which when we built playbooks, what we recognized was there's no one playbook that gets it right every time, and teams need the ability to be able to tailor and adapt a playbook for their particular project or program or scenario they face. So we came up with the concept that you can clone a playbook from a master, and then teams can then tailor it and right size it for the individual project. And once they've done that, they can then start assigning the tasks, activities to the playbook and tick it off. And you use that clone as the vehicle to kind of evidence that, yeah, we followed the process consistently. And 4 is when we moved into delivery, we had to switch on kind of reporting so that you can track delivery and progress. But also we're doing quite an interesting topic with AI, which is ingesting lessons learned, looking at clones and trying to push recommendations to people at the point in time. So that's the kind of R&D research that we're doing with AI at the moment. Okay, so hopefully that has sort of grounded you into kind of what we mean by the playbook concept. Then we get into the Agile Playbook, and this is probably come from a couple of conversations that we've had with clients and a few prospects, which is we're really struggling with the adoption of Agile and the integration of Agile within the business. So we just thought we'd say, well, let's look at it and let's see how we can try and design solutions that might ease those pain points. I'm not going to go too much into kind of the definition of Agile on this talk. I'm certainly not going to go into the kind of sort of Agile project management debate, because I think we could be here for hours, if not decades. Essentially, you know, when we talk about it, there's kind of 2 key concepts in our head. There's Agile used for kind of software development, and the kind of new phrase is also then applying the kind of principles or manifesto of Agile into business operations, and that tends to be kind of business agility. So you're applying Agile ways of thinking into how you operate your business, and then there's kind of the old debate of what's Agile project management business analysis. And obviously, I think there's a lot of excitement about Agile, and a lot of companies are on the adoption path of using it. But I think, you know, you ask yourself the question that, you know, it's much more focused on people doing the work and how they work together. But what we find, and we put the quote in the back, is it sounds fantastic, motivational, but I think many find the reality of Agile, which is no more than kind of disconnected teams working harder and getting frustrated with the lack of support and clarity in how things are actually done. And you know, the common pattern for Agile, it's not too complex. Essentially, you know, you are structuring delivery into a set of increments that you would then run a number of sprints within. You have a number of features, you're delivering stories, and you might have kind of retrospective activities at the end of each sprint or at the end of each increment. And you come to the end of an increment, you should be at that point releasing kind of a release to the business or doing a demo. And then most organizations now will put in some form of increment gate so that you transition and you're ready for the next one. So that tends to be the kind of basic agile pattern that we come across. But what goes wrong was quite an interesting topic. And you can read these, but these were some of the sort of commentaries that our sort of clients and prospects were giving us. We're saying, look, there's some standard stuff in there you just expect. So yes, there's a bit of resistance to change. You will get that with kind of introducing agile or any new concept into the business. One of the other ones was just like really inconsistency in the kind of action, like the practices that different teams were using, and in some ways it was becoming kind of idiosyncratic to like the individual agile coach. They were determining what their team would do. Another one was saying, oh well, I'm not doing that, I'm doing this. And essentially what teams were really struggling with was actually we're saying we're agile, but really when we look under the hood, there's different techniques, different frameworks people are using, and all the teams are trying to work out how they navigate that. The other aspect was no time for innovation, which I think is common. Yes, we'll do retrospectives, we should do it, but actually a lot of the pressure is no, we're forced straight through into working on the next sprint and iteration. And the other one that we called out was clarity on roles. It becomes quite confusing. I don't know who I belong to, or I was working on this team, now I'm on this team, and it actually becomes quite difficult for individuals to kind of have that team cohesion because they're constantly moving around and don't know their scope. So these are just some of the sound bites that that we've gathered, and I think for us, when we look at solutions, it's always good to try and get under the hood in terms of what the problems are. But also, I think it's a journey, but it can actually be quite an exhausting journey for some. So a lot of them have been, we've been trying to implement agile for quite a long time, but actually it's constant change, and actually people are quite tired and frustrated with it. They're the kind of, that was just to sort of set the scene. And there's a few things that we've done, or just resources that we've developed to help people just adjust to the impact. And this was just a very simple diagram that we've done for a few clients. Is look, it's not too complex in terms of what we're doing. You're an organization, you have a portfolio of change that you want to deliver. Whether you want to call it a program, whether you're kind of going the full kind of safe route and you want a release train, or you want a solution train, or you just want it, instead of a project, you want to call it a team. Really what you're kind of designing there is a vehicle to deliver some form of scope, whether it's aligned around a value chain, around a kind of particular solution like ERP. It doesn't matter. It's just essentially, look, it's a construct, a vehicle that we want to put in place that will deliver change to the organization. You then get to kind of the left hand and the right hand side there, the kind of stage, waterfall, agile, kind of hybrid technique and increment. And we don't get too lost in that. All we say is, look, it doesn't matter. When you deliver change, you're either going to call it a stage. What you're doing is just binding binding some form of scope and time for people to come back to you and say, are you safe? Have you progressed well? What's the next thing that we want to do? And it's more of a kind of management control you put in place. And you can say the same thing about what an increment is. Normally, very rarely, an increment will ever go past a quarter or sort of 12 weeks. Again, it's the same questions you ask. How well are the team performing? How much have you actually produced? And what's your plan for the next stage or next increment? And then you get into, well, what's the different types of language in the middle? And I think this is the bit where they kind of overlap. The traditional world of like project management will be, well, we need to think about work package and products. And on the flip side, we'll be talking about sprints and features. And we put that kind of wiggly diagram and sort of arrows in the middle, really just to illustrate that actually in a kind of end-to-end sort of delivery system that's delivering change, it's very rare that you don't need all four of those components to deliver the change successfully. So to say that one or the other don't need to be integrated is probably a bit of a farce on that one. So, but really what we're trying to do with this is just help people translate what they know into new ways of working. And it's important, but what we find, what people actually need is clarity on what the end-to-end cross-functional delivery system is. And that's really what they're screaming for. And so this kind of brings us on to looking at, okay, well, how would we kind of visualize that end-to-end kind of playbook for kind of agile delivery? And when we think about playbooks, there's sort of three types of playbooks that sort of that we end up designing or building. One, it can just be like a knowledge playbook that just codifies, look, here's all the deliverables, activities, here's the life cycle, and it's just used for knowledge and reference. And that's the first bit, which is just providing process clarity. What you don't, those kind of knowledge playbooks though don't really address the problem, which is how do you reduce drift? And that's the main focus of why you would want to kind of implement playbooks, which is, well, actually, can I now take that knowledge playbook and move it into assurance that teams can actually use it, clone it, tailor it, tick it off, upload the kind of evidence that things have actually been done in the way that we said it done. And then further over, you can go into like delivery playbooks. You know, we don't have a process, we don't have kind of any system for managing this particular part of the process. Can we just use the playbook to kind of manage the delivery of that process? And that's really just addressing the drift challenge. But we use this frame just to help us. And, you know, we started off quite simply and said, well, look, actually, you know, if you think about trying to build like an end-to-end playbook for like cross-functional teams, the kind of layout of the playbook would be quite simple. It'd be like, well, look, it's a couple of increments, and we'll put a stage gate in for each increment, because we're probably going to have to come and do a kind of system or solution demo. We're going to have to kind of make sure we're clear on what we're going to achieve in the next increment. There'll be some kind of governance that we kind of have to transition and go through. And, you know, we were like, well, you know, oops, IT would be like, oh, well, yeah, that's easy for us. You know, IT development can put on their sprints, and we can talk about how many sprints might be in each increment. And you can start to slowly visualize what that playbook would start like. But kind of the next question they'll ask is, oh, well, yeah, IT development, that's fine, but we obviously need a bit of architecture. And like the architecture team will be like, oh, well, whether you call it kind of solution intent, but normally it'll be like, well, we need kind of a high level design, we need some kind of concepts, some guiding principles for us, we need some form of component, either in HLD or lower level design at some point, and we might have to repeat that at each increment, or we're just updating it as we go along. But certainly, you know, I might need design authority approval maybe in the first increment for making sure that everyone's happy with the kind of intent and where we're going. So architecture is probably one of the lanes that we'd probably add into the playbook. And business analysis, well, you know, we'll be like, oh, well, we need some high level requirements, we need some stories, some features, or it might be, you know, an epic that we need to find. And, you know, at this point, you know, I think they'd say, look, I'm not treating them as separate teams. I'm just saying, look, I think these are the kind of core activities that these functions need to do at each increment. And this will then start helping understand, well, this is what the BA does, this is what the architect does, this is what the IT development team do, and it's quite transparent. Naturally then you'll get, oh, well, project management will come along and say, well, yeah, that's great, but, you know, we need to put the kind of basics in. We need, you know, we're managing risks, issues, controls. I know we're going to build this agile in an agile way, but we'll need some kind of plan. We might need resources from other parts of the business. We might have suppliers that are involved in here, so we need to manage that end-to-end project. Or it might just be we need a business case to kind of keep going for the next increment. So that's another lane. And, you know, you might then, I think, and this is what we find is the bigger challenge that the organizations face with the kind of agile way of working is, well, how do you then, if we're using agile to deliver change to the business, how do we get all the different functions that might be involved that are needed to help us actually make the release, or do the actual deployment and implementation? So yes, you might have business change, but broadly, you know, there might be marketing, there might be HR, there might be learning and development, because we might need to train people, we might need to recruit people because we're building something new. So what we're trying to do is make sure that when we look, it doesn't matter whether we call it increment or stage, and it's not really a sprint question, it's not about the number of sprints. that can be given. What we're trying to sort of understand is, well, what are all of the other kind of activities that we need to align in order to do a successful delivery of change. And then naturally, you'll add in the last one, which will be, it doesn't matter whether you're agile or waterfall, everyone seems to tend to leave IT service management to the last minute. But again, that'll be another kind of theme that we'd have to integrate, which is, well, who's supporting it? What's the kind of service design package? Are we accepting this into service? So you'll need to answer those questions at some point, whether it's kind of the first increment or second increment. You kind of have to plot out that journey. And what we're trying to do with the playbook is, well, actually give the teams that clarity and visualization of, well, I understand what all the different functions are that we need in order to deliver the change. And the kind of first concept of agile is, okay, that we understand we are cross-functional, we are working together, but that's really only going to be achieved if we have a kind of shared understanding of what are the deliverables, what's our way of working, and then we can see that visually connected. And then also, when you look at the kind of life cycle clarity, what we need to understand is, yes, I understand that it's made up of 4 increments, and they're going to be maybe 12 in total, like it's 12 months in duration. But I can then start to see, well, when are we making the major changes? Which increment will deliver kind of big releases that would impact the business? And then we can start to plot on when we have to do organizational readiness, when we have to do kind of training, needs analysis, when we have to produce the training material. And it's that clarity that we don't want to get lost in kind of a full end-to-end delivery system. And then the final point was, okay, once you have that, I think it's then you give at least PMO and assurance half a chance of being, okay, I can understand how this change is going to be delivered and how I actually assure it effectively. And it might be that it's 4 increments, and it might be that it might be 6. But essentially, what we then get into the pattern of is, oh, well, we're just cloning another increment in the playbook, and we're just adapting it for what we actually want to achieve. So it can be endless, or at some point you might have to say, actually, it will finish. So that was us in terms of visualizing the kind of end-to-end playbook for Agile. So yes, we'd probably move away from stage definitions, it'd be increments, but very much still giving like all of the cross-functional teams a view of how we've actually translated that in an Agile way. So we then started to look at, well, okay, there's different playbooks that are needed here, I think, to help clients actually follow and implement Agile. And a few that we kind of developed, and there's a prototype that I'll show you on the call. Obviously, there is one, and I think this is a common one, that there's kind of the portfolio management. How do you kind of either capture epics and move them through approval and get them approved, and then they can drop into delivery? There's the Agile delivery playbook that I've just talked about. Like, how could we start to construct a kind of template and format for clients that at least gives them a starter for 10 in terms of how to construct their Agile delivery playbook? I think already within the platform, we've got the like Kanban and Scrum playbooks that are already available in the templates. Another one that we use internally for us at MetaGrid is we have a release playbook. So, how do we actually approve a release that can go live? What are all the controls and sign-offs when we make a release? So that, again, that's more the kind of DevOps, but again, another really valuable playbook in kind of managing Agile software development. So we think they're the kind of core suite of playbooks, and I've got a few examples to show you. We've also then sort of had a thought about, well, if I'm not using Agile for software development, what would be the business agility playbooks? And the first one we've had a look at is what we call a kind of the Agile operational plan. There's a kind of illustration of what that looks like. But again, giving a kind of cross-functional view of the organization, what each function's objectives are, and what are the kind of key activities that they're operating within each operational increment, which would probably be a quarter. And that may be supported by like a functional team plan that's connected to it. There's naturally implementation playbooks, which I think there would be like the Agile implementation playbook that actually, how do you actually go about embedding and implementing? And also following sort of recent changes that we've introduced, we built a change management playbook, one for method grid, but also one as a kind of generic template. But again, building a specific version of that to support Agile implementation. So I might just switch now and just show you sort of our initial thoughts on, I think it's we had a little play around with the kind of Agile portfolio roadmap playbook. But also we, as part of doing the design, we thought we might also have a look at how AI can actually play a role in helping teams. So I'm just going to switch. Hang on 1 second. So if you can see that, so the Agile playbook, like the first one was the kind of portfolio roadmap. And whether we keep them separate, but we thought, you know, you're going to talk about the kind of strategic themes, and you may have multiple different strategic themes that you're mapping kind of epics onto. It doesn't really matter how many you have, and you might define who the owner of that strategic theme is, and you can define the kind of objectives. But then you could then start building the playbook and adding in particular epics. So we had a go, and this was just what we were testing. So one of the features or epics that we're working on is the kind of AI assistant for playbook. And you know, you can click onto this and you can say, well, look, here's the kind of description of the epic. Here's the outcomes that we want for that particular epic. Here's the high-level features. Here's the non-functional requirements that have been gathered. Who's the epic owner in the business? You could then start to kind of give some broad information about its implementation period, but also, I think this is the key bit, come back from a few clients, is just helping teams say, look, you know, we need the ability to make sure that some of these activities have actually been done in terms before we make the approval, and so that, you know, we ensure that the actual process of registering it and recording it has been actually actioned. Now that can be assigned to different people and different teams, and if we need it, it can even have evidence uploaded for when it's required. But basically giving you the key controls of managing the controls of managing your portfolio roadmap. Now, the little bit of experiment that we had, and we thought maybe for clients that are, say, if you might have different colors for different types of epics, so one for business, maybe one for kind of architectural or technical. And then we started playing around with, well, how does AI help clients get a first draft of their epic? So I've got an example. So I'll maybe move it to a different one. So maybe a different theme might be payment related or revenue related. And we just thought maybe we will have Apple Pay integration as an epic that we wanted to take. And what we started to look at as well, if we just give it a broad title for an epic, how well can AI interpret that and actually give us the first draft of the working sections that we need? There's quite a few. And if I click on epic, now hopefully, now this is fairly untrained, but obviously naturally we could refine the sort of query to be more specific to the actual solution that you're actually delivering. But broadly, it's come back with a kind of epic description, like what the hypothesis is, what's the kind of outcomes and indicators for it. It's come up with the kind of key controls that we want to apply for approving this epic into the portfolio. It's come up with what it thinks are some of the leading indicators, what are the kind of high-level features, and given us an overview of some of the non-functional requirements. I'm not saying that that's perfect, but certainly it's helping us be more consistent in the definition, but also it's given me a first draft that we can work through and start going out. We might want to adjust and tweak it or add more detail. We might want to change some of the key business indicators or leading indicators specific to our measures. But again, this is a very generically trained query, but we could make it trained for the particular solution that you're working with. So if it's ERP, or if it's maybe give it the scope of the Agile release train, then essentially then the kind of types of queries and responses it gives back would be more specific to the solution that you do. So that's kind of just sort of how we see potentially. And one of the other templates we'll probably build is, again, like user story, and try, I think we've done some initial testing, is can we also build the story but also give you kind of a list of cucumber or sort of given when then statements associated with that story to kind of help you be consistent and fast track kind of story generation and build. Right, hopefully I'll just switch back. So that's the kind of first playbook that we thought would be really useful. We're kind of working on the Agile delivery playbook, and there's a few more slides that we've got on that, just to sort of share our initial thoughts on it. So the Agile delivery playbook, whilst we sort of thought about it and said, oh, well, it could just be like increments that are integrated across teams, what we recognized is to make it kind of reusable and tailorable, that probably before we just jump into kind of like an incremental pattern, we're probably going to need some stage that helps you go through the activities in terms of what's needed to actually set up and initiate an Agile team, or what's required to help you establish like an Agile release train. It's kind of, we need the activities that first, before we get into kind of incremental change, delivering incremental change, we're going to have to, there are some standard deliverables or things that need to happen first in order to set that up. So minimum set, we were like, well, before we get into the kind of increment pattern, we need something that would just help teams go through what the basics are in terms of team setup and putting things in place for that. The next part of the conversation was, we might need to look at the difference between certain types of increment. So we might have a standard incremental pattern which details what all the teams need to do, but we recognize that when we come to like a major release that the kind of we are delivering, we just recognize that there'd probably be more like business change activities, there'd be more kind of deployment activities that need to be put in place. We've got more things like the business need to put in place, like training, business readiness, organizational readiness assessment. There could even be like more input from like IT service management. So what we recognized was that, and there may be kind of an increment that's more of a deployment pattern. So if I'm trying to construct the playbook, I'm cloning an increment. Is it just a standard increment? Yes. Actually, are we coming to a big release and a big deployment? Actually, when we do, we need to recognize that there's a different pattern that we deploy for that type of increment. Again, I'm not trying to make it perfect, but at least we're kind of giving teams kind of 80% of what the things are that they need to think about in order to kind of manage that process. The next one was, well, we could just keep this playbook going, and it could just keep cloning like the increments for each within the playbook. They just keep cloning it for the number of increments that they have. But at some point, the reality may kick in that says, actually, we're not going to do another increment post this. We're going to shut it down. Might be a project or program environment. Certainly won't be for us. I mean, our product will probably be just ongoing. So in certain cases, the kind of playbook just keeps rolling on. However, in certain circumstances, in organizations that say, like, we've done this, we've delivered it. Actually, it's more now service management. Actually, we're going to stand down the team. We're not going to do further increments for it. So you'd need something that would allow you to kind of close and shut down the team and disband them. And then the other sort of spanner in the works was, in some cases, like a procurement increment. So yeah, we're not, yes, we understand what it is that we're trying to do, but actually we need to go and procure it, or we have to go out and procure the resources to actually be part of the team. So before we can actually start to get into the kind of incremental development of value using the platform, there's a whole set of kind of, well, what's the solution that we're going to go out to? So we just thought, again, build something in the playbook that would, if you need that, then you just add that in, slot that stage in and move it in, and then you can be like, okay, well, actually, no, it's not, we need to go through procurement. This is what the different teams all need to do in order to get that. And then once we've got it, then we can then stand it up and then start moving into incremental delivery. And that was the kind of, that was our kind of initial structure of just a basic kind of Agile playbook. And obviously what we're doing in the background at the moment is then, okay, well, what are all the deliverables and activities that you could produce within that playbook? So you would have a working template to help you with that. Now the business agility playbook, this was a bit easier. We use this at MethodGrid for us, so it's kind of an existing playbook that we use. So we'll probably quite quickly turn this one around and add this to the kind of templates area. And in terms of like the business agility playbook, and like the term business agility is let's try and adopt some agile principles into just how we manage the operation of our business. And this is really the kind of construct. Instead of you know, your kind of teams that you'd expect for projects, maybe it starts to just look like the kind of different business functions. So I think you'd always have like the governance key events that we have in the business, like our quarterly board or kind of big events that we run. You then start to say, well, we've probably got marketing, we've got sales, we've got different services or functions or practices. It depends on the type of business you are. You may then have kind of product and technology, you know, things like we have to do each year, like cyber essentials, which you're doing at the moment, but key things that we have to do on the kind of product and technology roadmap. And then you have the key things in terms of HR as well and operations. So, and for this type of playbook, we thought, well, actually, if you define what the objectives are for your business plan, and you could define them as OKRs, so everyone's really clear on what the different kind of objectives they have. But then you're allowing the teams then who own their particular functions to kind of plot out, look, this is what I'm going to commit to each quarter. And there will be a bit they'll overcommit, but what we're just ensuring here is that across, again, similar to IT software development, across the different businesses, just having a shared view of what the different functions and teams are working on, making sure that if they need a bit of support, you know, the connect between marketing and sales are connected with their activities, or service and product are connected in terms of key activities that they're aligned. But again, just giving teams the visibility of, well, what are our kind of priorities and what are we working on each quarter. And then we come to the kind of next quarter, and it might be that there's a kind of event that we run. So we bring all the teams together, we plan what the kind of next priorities are for the next increment, and on we go. And this tends to be like the agility playbook for us is probably more geared around helping you create clarity on how you deliver your business plan, but mainly making sure that you've got teams that are coordinated and cross-functional to be able to achieve that. So that was our kind of just initial run through and thoughts with a kind of few examples. I made a post about the Agile Playbook on LinkedIn probably about a month ago, and very much we kind of wanted to make this kind of more of a collaboration, gather ideas and feedback about what would be useful and what would help teams. So yeah, please, if you just have sort of initial ideas and thoughts, but again, it's an ongoing sort of initiative for us to kind of give you the kind of resources that help. So yeah, please, yeah, initial thoughts or questions that you might have. Yeah, Rab, yeah, I think we really like the business agility playbook. I think we'll probably quite get that into the templates quite quickly, because we have kind of an existing working example on that one. Yeah, no, and agree. Yeah, just making sure people have got clarity on what the kind of key objectives are, and yeah, we tend to use OKRs for that. But it's then just helping the teams translate, well, what activities do we need to undertake to deliver that. Can you link different elements in the Agile Delivery Playbook? Yeah, so Simon, on that you can. So it's kind of key bit for us was, I might have a portfolio playbook which might have a particular epic, or I can link grids together. So I might have the Agile Project Delivery playbook, and it might have a number of sprints, but each of those sprints may have then a supporting Kanban or Scrum board that I can click to and connect and navigate to. So we're not too far from being able to integrate and navigate from hopefully from portfolio into kind of program project right down into team, to give you clarity on that. Yeah, John, good question. The base kind of integration at the moment for Jira is, if you're using Jira, then essentially you can link, you might on your Agile Delivery Playbook, which is kind of integrating all the different functions that are needed. You may have a kind of, you might have put like there's 5 or 6 sprints in this iteration, and then you can link from that sprint object in method grid to the actual Jira board, and so that teams can click on it and navigate and they can actually access Jira. I think in the future we probably will look at kind of sharing the progress of information on that board within method grid through an API. Yeah, can you link playbooks to other playbooks or create a taxonomy? Yes, Simon, you can. We don't put any limitations on the kind of what the hierarchy is followed, but you've got the ability to kind of link playbooks together, or link particular elements on a playbook together as well. So it just improves kind of navigation across the piece. A lot of questions we get during Agile delivery is the outcomes or benefits realization during the life cycle of delivery. How best do you map those? Amrit, that's a really good question, and I think when we're building the kind of Agile version at the moment, and I think what you have to, when you're doing Agile delivery, it probably pushes a lot more focus on benefits actually, because you have to do it in each increment. So what we tend to find, or the way that we've designed it, is there's a benefits management sort of theme on the Agile Delivery Playbook, and it's going through, well, what are the profiles, but it probably forces you into benefit measuring a lot earlier than traditional. So it's really how you establish the benefit measures and constantly measure them at each increment or after each increment, because you should be demonstrating value and being able to report on that. But yeah, I think that's the one bit is, we found is when you think about it holistically, like the end-to-end delivery system, you can't just view it as it's just software development. It has to be kind of an integrated delivery, and that's where it kind of pulls in those other things that you have to think about. But that can be quite difficult if you haven't got something that you can visualize and share with teams and construct. Any more questions? Can you change the level or view of the portfolio, sort of simple or heat map view? Yeah, I think you can. I think you could just use that kind of the basic features that you have with method grid. So you could highlight which elements are kind of high priority, red, amber, green, and you can just use filtering to kind of show that, or you could use particular labels potentially assigned to each element to give you a kind of additional, like additional viewpoint. The other one, Simon, just that we were thinking about as well, is just being able to switch from the visual view to the Gantt view, so that you can actually see the duration of kind of epics and the kind of dependencies that certain epics or certain features have on each other as well, by using the kind of Gantt feature as well to do that as well. Right, conscious of time, please, if there's more questions, please feel to reach out. Just to navigate through, so just a bit of news from our side. Obviously, we're going to do a bit more on Academy, so how we actually do integrated learning, and that's the next GRIDtalk in October. And colleagues Alice and Rachel are going to go through that, but and showcase a few examples of how we've done that. We're obviously, please, if you don't, strongly recommend that you follow us on LinkedIn, so we get access to all our events, publications, and resources. We're delighted to be sort of the APM award finalist for our work with Network Rail. We also just won not won, but we're also awarded for the Project Controls Expo in November as well. So we're really looking forward to those events. The slides will come out post the event, which has a few links. So if you want to kind of see a more detailed example of a playbook, I do recommend you have a look at Pace Digital, which is publicly available. So that's on our website, and the case study is there as well, and that gives you a live link. If you're interested in the Academy, you can click on that, and that'll just give you a video of how we see the future of how we integrate learning into delivery. And then there's if you're more interested, like I said before, there's a whole series on kind of playbooks and a white paper on building world-class playbooks as well. Finally, as well, just to finish up, we also have October's live event, which we're running in Bath. So I think there are a few spaces. So if you are interested and would like to come and spend the day with us in Bath, we have a few spots available. And the kind of focus of this session is very much the kind of future direction and for the roadmap for the product. So if you're interested in playbooks and want to kind of shape the future and the functionality, then please, ping me on LinkedIn, or just drop me a line. And then, finally, just to finish the session, so unfortunately, we're changing platform. So once the new platform is up and available, we'll give you the links to register for the next event. But thank you guys for joining this month's GRIDtalk. Hopefully that was useful. Thanks very much. Take care. See you next month.